Hey everybody again, this is Mr. Reeves back with you, and today we're going to be looking at adding integers with different signs. And if you guys want to follow along in your textbook, I am on page 13, lesson 1.2, adding integers with different signs. All right, and just like when we were adding integers with the same sign, we're going to be looking at it three different ways. We're going to be looking at tiles, we're going to be looking at number lines, and we're going to be looking at the rules for adding integers with different signs. All right? Okay, so let's dive right in. I'm going to go ahead and go to the tiles or the counters first because I really like this way, especially for adding integers with different signs. It just makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, so just a reminder, when you have a yellow counter or a yellow tile, that is a positive, and when you have a red tile or counter, that is a negative. All right, so one thing that is foundational for understanding adding integers when the signs are different is this fact that when you add a positive 1 to a negative 1, you get a sum of 0. They cancel each other out. Okay? It's like digging a hole and then filling the hole back up. You're right back where you started. It's like stepping forward one step and then stepping back one step. You're right back where you started. So whenever you see a pair, one positive and one negative, they are going to cancel each other out. All right? They're going to cancel each other out. So one thing you'll often see us doing is putting a line through them. All right, so for example, right here we have this problem. Positive 3 plus negative 2. There's 1, 2, 3 positives and 2 negatives. All right, and you'll notice that they mark these off. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and put a red line through them. That makes 0, and that makes 0. So what are we left with? We are left with a positive 1. All right, so it says form to 0 pairs. That's what these are, okay? These are called 0 pairs. This up here is a 0 pair. One positive plus one negative makes 0. Essential for your understanding here. All right, so what is left when you remove the 0 pairs? One yellow counter is left, right? And a yellow counter is positive 1. So 3 positives plus 2 negatives makes a positive 1. Okay? All right, then they give us another problem. And they say model negative 6 plus 3. Negative 6 plus 3. So I'm going to go over here to my 2 counter app that I have here. Negative 6. That's a negative because remember negatives are red. So there's negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6. Whoops. There we go. So there's negative 6. And what did they want us to do? They wanted us to do negative 6 plus positive 3. Negative 6 plus positive 3. Let me make sure I actually have that right. Negative 6 plus positive 3. I do. I have that right. Okay? Now, what do we have right here? We have a 0 pair. That cancels that out. You know what? I'm going to make this a little bit wider here so we can see it better. So that cancels out. That cancels out. That cancels out. What do I have? I have 3 0 pairs, right? 3 0 pairs. And what does that leave me with? What's left? Negative 3. All right? So what is our problem here? Negative 6 plus positive 3 is equal to negative 3. 6 negatives added to 3 positives. We get 3 0 pairs. We're left with 3 negatives. All right, so if we were to go back over here to our textbook, here we go. start with 6 red counters, right, to represent -6. Add 3 yellow counters to represent adding 3. Form 0 pairs. What is left? 3 red counters. So you get -6 plus +3 is -3. Okay? And that's how you do adding positives and negative integers with counters. It really just comes down to, right, what do you have more of? What do you have more of, right? So let me do one more problem here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, so just by looking, what do you see? I have more yellows, right? The fact that I have more yellows means my answer, when everything is said and done, is going to be positive, right? So let me write what we have here. We have -5 plus +7, and we want to know what that is. So what are we going to do here? We're going to cancel off the 0 pairs. Those make 0. Every positive counter cancels a negative counter. All right? Empty the hole, fill the hole. Empty the hole, fill the hole. Dig the hole, fill the hole. Dig the hole, fill the hole. Dig the hole, fill the hole. All right? Forward or backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards. So what do we end up with? We end up with 2 positives, right? So -5 plus +7 is +2. Here we go. There's 1 and there's 2. There's our 2 blue counters that are left over. All right, so that, ladies and gentlemen, is adding positive and negative numbers, positive and negative integers using tiles. All right, so let's go back a page, back to page 13, and let's look at a number line, okay? All right, first a reminder, we talked about this before. When you're on a number line and you're adding a positive number, you go to the right. When you're adding a negative number, you go to the left. Again, adding a positive number, you go to the right. When you're adding a negative number, you go to the left. When we did our previous lessons, we were always going the same direction for both numbers, but now we're going to switch. All right, so we're going to look at +4 plus -3, but now we're going to do it on the number line, okay? So I'm going to start at +4. Positive. So here's 0. Here's +4, right? So I actually went from 0 to the right because it was +4. In fact, let me get this back to where it was. And let me do an arrow here and show that I actually went 4 to the right because it's +4, right? And then I'm going to add a -3. So from here, I'm going to go back. There's 1, there's 2, there is 3, right? And notice, let me see if I can get that a little more straight. Notice we went to the left, okay? So we have a +4, and then we have a -3. And where did we end up at? We ended up right here. We ended up at +1, right? There's our answer. Okay, so +4 plus -3 is +1. That's how you do it on the number line. All right, what about -7 plus 5? So I'm going to start at 0. Again, I'm going to go all the way back to 7 because when you add, whoops, that was a mistake. Let's try this again. All right, let's go back to where we were. Back, here we go. Sorry, guys. Okay, let me try to do this again. All right, let's just see if I can move it up a little bit. Okay, so there we go. So there is back 7. So that is adding -7. All right, let me do this right here. So I have -7, and then I want to add 5, okay? So from where I was, I'm going to go to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so that is plus 5. And where do I end up at? I end up right here at negative 2. Okay, so start at, we're actually going to start at 0. Actually, well, they're having us start at negative 7, okay? But we really started at 0, went back 7, okay? Then we're going to move 5 units to the right because it is a positive that we're adding, or in the positive direction. And we get negative 7 plus 5 is negative 2. Okay? All right. Now, if you look at this one right off the bat, you should know what the answer is because I have 6 positives and 6 negatives. Well, anytime two numbers have the same absolute value, but they're on opposite sides of the number line, they're 0, and the answer will always be 0. So look for these ones where they have the same absolute value, but the opposite sign. The answer will always be 0. I'm not even going to do that one on the number line. These ones should jump out at you right here. Negative 2 plus positive 2. We know right off the bat the answer is going to be 0. Those have the same absolute value, but the opposite sign. They're opposite numbers, okay? What is that? That right there is what we were talking about earlier, right? That is a 0 pair. This one right here is a 0 pair, okay? So that's how you add on the number line. Okay, so let me do one more example on the number line. All right, how about we do, let's do positive 12 plus negative 8, okay? So I'm going to do positive 12 plus negative 8. All right, so first thing I'm going to do down here is I'm going to go over here to the positive 12. Whoops, hold on. I'm going to have to do this down here first. All right, so I'm going to go to the positive 12 and put my marker there and label it 12. Okay, so that got me to 12. Now I want to go add, I want to add negative 8, okay? So I'm going to go here. Actually, let me flip it around first. There we go. So I'm going to line this up at, I'm going to try to line this up. There we go. At 12. All right, now let me get this back. Now I want to go 8, okay? So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. So let's go ahead and click on that one right there. And that gets us to 4. All right. And let's see if I can get this to work. Sometimes it doesn't always work for me. So I can fill it in. Whoops, I didn't mean to put cents here. What did we have? We had 12 plus negative 8. 12 plus negative 8. There we go. Whoops, we got extra parentheses in there. Oh, well, we won't worry about it. All right, and what did we end up with? We ended up at 4. All right, so if we write this out, we had a positive 12 plus a negative 8, and we ended up at a positive 4. Or if I show you the way I was in the textbook, all right, we would start at 0. We go all the way over to positive 12 in a positive direction, right? And then what do we do from 12? We go back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? And where do we end up at? We end up right here. Whoops, where do we end up at? We end up at 4, right here. So positive 12 plus negative 8 is 4. All right, so that is adding and subtracting integers with different signs on the number line. All right, so first we did counters, okay? Second, we did number line. And the final way we're going to talk about it is just using the rules, all right, or using an understanding of what it means. All right, so if you are in your book and you turn to page 15, you will see this table here. All right, and it talks about adding integers, and it says when integers have the same sign, it's a review. It says add the absolute values of the integers and use the common sign. All right, so when they have the same sign, just add them together, and then you keep the sign the same. Positive 3 plus positive 5 is positive 8. Negative 2 plus negative 7 is negative 9. When you're adding with the sign always stays the same. All right, with different signs, okay, I'm going to tell you now, you could read through this. It's kind of confusing, so I'm just going to put this in my own words, okay? When I look at this problem, I say, which one has the greater absolute value? Well, the one with the greater absolute value is the further from 0, right? Negative 5 has the greater absolute value. Sometimes people will say which one's a bigger number, but that's actually incorrect because positives are always bigger. 3 is bigger than negative 5, but negative 5 has a greater absolute value. All right, so which one has the greater absolute value? It's 5, right? And then subtract. So then 5 minus 3 is 2, but then you take the sign of the greater absolute value. All right, when I look at negative 10 and negative 1, which one has a greater absolute value? All right, negative 10 does. Okay, so then I subtract. I ignore the sign. 10 minus 1 is 9, but I keep the sign of the greater one. All right, or another way to look at it, and this kind of goes back to the counters. This is the way I really encourage my students to think about it. What do you have more of, and how many more do you have? All right, so I'm going to write that right down here. What do you have more of? Okay, that's right here. When I'm looking at this, what do I have more of? I have more negatives, right? What do I have more of? I have more negatives. That's finding the greater absolute value. So that's the first thing. And then the second question is, how many more do you have? And that's where you subtract. 5 minus 3 is 2. 10 minus 1 is 9. All right, what do you have more of? Which one has the greater absolute value? And how many more do you have? What's the difference between them? And we subtract. Okay, and then again, right here, these are examples of those 0 pairs, right? These are those 0 pairs we were talking about. When you add opposites, you'll always get 0. When you add opposites, you'll always get 0, and those are called additive inverses. Additive inverses, okay? So a couple examples, and then we're done. I know this has kind of been a long video, but this is a really important topic, okay? All right, so let's take a look at these examples in your turn, and I'm going to kind of guide you in the way that I was just talking to you about, all right? So I'm going to skip to number 8 real quick because the numbers are a little bit smaller. So when I look at number 8, first thing, which one has the greater absolute value? Which one do you have more of? Do you have more positives or do you have more negatives? The answer is you have more negatives, right? So immediately I know the answer is going to be negative. All right, let's go to this one. Which do I have more of? I have more negatives. So immediately I know the answer is going to be negative. What about this one? What do I have more of? I have more negatives. Interesting. They made all those have more negatives. And then this one, what do we have right here? We have a 0 pair, right? We empty the hole and then fill the hole. We go 13 steps forward and 13 steps backwards. So that one is going to be 0. We don't have to put positive or we don't have to put negative. All right, so I wish they had made all these negatives, but they did. So we'll just go from there. So the first question is, what do I have more of? We already answered that. The second question is, how many more do I have? And that's where I'm going to subtract, all right? Now, I just subtract the absolute value, so I'm going to go 18 minus 10. And when I do 18 minus 10, I get 8. So the answer to this one is negative 8. On this one, I'm simply going to do 26 minus 25. And the answer to that is 1. So my answer is negative 1. All right, and so number 7, it's a little more complicated, so I saved this one for last, but it's not that bad. We can subtract, right? 51 minus 23. We're going to have to borrow, right? Remember borrowing? It's been a while if you haven't done this. All right. So 11 minus 3 is 8. And then 4 minus 2 is 2. So 51 minus 23 is 28. So negative 51 plus positive 23 is negative 28. Again, what do you have more of? Find the sign of the 1. Find the greater absolute value, the one with the greater absolute value. And how many more do you have? You subtract. All right, so that is how, ladies and gentlemen, you add integers with different signs. Okay, I hope this video was helpful. Time now to get some practice and see if you understand. Have a great day, everybody. See you next time.